there. So in this video, we're going to take a look at the basics of supply and demand. And then in the next video, we're actually going to graph it. So in this one, it's a lot about the shifters and things like that. Actually, I take it back. We're going to draw one graph in this one. So you're going to need a blank sheet of paper to graph on. And if you're doing this digitally, you can type it into your own packet for these. So the first question is demand, and what is it versus quantity demanded? So demand is the relationship between quantity demanded, which is going to be defined in a second, and a specific price at all price levels. So in other words, it's basically the amount of quantity demanded at all the different prices. So it's a relationship is really the important part. It's the relationship between how much people are willing and able to purchase at a certain price at all the different, maybe it's better to say at all prices. Whereas quantity demanded, and I'm going to abbreviate it here, is the specific amount people are willing and able to buy at a specific price. And so if you kind of were to create a table showing all of the quantities demanded with prices kind of off to the side, that table really represents what demand is. So we've got 5 things that will actually change demand as opposed to just changing quantity demanded, right? Because that's the idea that price doesn't shift the curve. So the first is market size. If there's a change in the number of consumers, that would affect demand. And obviously more consumers, more demand. And that's to the right. So if we have a shift, it might be a good idea to put here, shift right equals increase, left equals a decrease. The next is expectations about future prices. And this is if expect higher soon, buy now. So demand more. Because you're going to say to yourself, if I think the price of this good is going to be more in a week, I should buy it now before the price goes up. If I think the price is going to drop a week from now, I'm going to hold off on purchasing today and demand would decrease. The second one, or the third one, is related goods. And this is the idea of substitutes and complements. And we would say that if we have a substitute that goes up in price, then the demand rises. If sub P increase, then D increases for the particular good. And we would say if complement P increases, demand decreases. Trying to abbreviate so we can fit some things in here. In fact, I'm just going to kind of make these off to the right a little bit so they're a little bit more space. This is the idea that if a substitute goes up in price, so I'm going to start by explaining this one. Like if you're thinking of the good Coca-Cola, and then you have another good Pepsi, they're substitutes for each other. And if the price of Pepsi goes up, people are going to shift over and start buying more Coca-Cola, so the demand for Coca-Cola would increase. Now, a different type of good would be a complement. Those are goods that are commonly purchased or used together. And so common good would be to use as hot dogs and hot dog buns, even if you don't eat hot dogs. So if the price of hot dog buns goes up, people are not going to buy as many hot dogs. And so we would say the demand for hot dogs can be affected by the price of another good. The fourth one on here is income. And this is the idea of the income of your consumers. If income of consumers increases, demand increases. They have more money that they can spend on those goods and services. And the last one is tastes or preferences. It'd be nice if I could spell, third time's a charm, preferences. If people develop a taste for a product, then demand increases. And again, all of these are also the reverse direction as well. So if people find out that your good is bad for them, they're less likely to purchase it. So substitutes are just kind of what they sound like, goods used in place of other goods. And complements are goods used together. So hot dogs and buns. And then we're going to say Coke and Pepsi as an example. And here we actually have an example of this here. If the price of hot dogs goes up, demand for hot dog buns, it would be better if I said that, hot dog buns decreases. And then if the price of Pepsi goes up, demand for Coke increases is kind of another way to think about that. Normal goods and inferior goods. Now this is going to be useful to understand income. And so I'm going to add here for normal goods, C number 4. So for a normal good, normal means that as income rises, demand increases. But an inferior good is as income rises, demand decreases. And if coffee is normal and incomes increase, demand for coffee should increase. Again, my spelling's terrible. But if tea is inferior and incomes increase, demand for tea will decrease. And there are some goods that are considered inferior goods. It's not the quality of the good, it's more or less the way that the relationship operates with income. Supply and quantity supplied is similar to how we define demand and quantity demanded. Supply is the relationship between quantity supplied and price at all prices. And so we have to know what quantity supplied is. Quantity supplied is the amount, and it's a specific amount. Producers are willing and able to sell at a specific price. And so we would say that price can change the quantity supplied, but price doesn't change supply. It's like a function, and if you plug in one value, you get another value. And so if you plug in price, you get quantity supplied out of the function supply. So there are things that do change supply, the number of producers, just like we had market size above. So we'd say if number of producers increases, then supply increases. And I'm going to shift that off to the right as well. For the next one, input costs, this is the cost of producing things. So if costs increase, then supply decreases. And a common cost is wages. We're going to have that one over and over again. Here's another one, technology. If technology improves, then we can produce more, so supply increases. And a fourth one, we have taxes and subsidies, and we'd say if taxes increase, then supply decreases. And that's because taxes equal cost is a way to think about that. A subsidy is the opposite. It's when the government pays you to do something. So they perform the opposite way. And then E is expectations about future prices. If suppliers think prices will be lower soon, they will sell more now. So supply increases. And then the opposite is also true. It's the idea that if you're a seller, if you're producing something and you think you're going to higher price in a week, you're going to hold off on producing it and selling it today as much as you can, because that way you reserve your inputs for later. Now we're going to draw a quick little supply and demand graph, and we're going to label a shortage, and we're going to label a surplus, and then we're going to show what supply and demand increases and decreases look like. So this is just a quick sketch. And again, I'd say do this off to the side. We have quantity on the x-axis and price on the y-axis. So we have demand downward sloping to the dirt, supply upward sloping to the sky. And we know that there's an equilibrium quantity, Q star, and an equilibrium price. But if the price were way up here, at this really high price, we're going to say price H, then you don't have very much demanded, but you have a lot supplied. So that's what we call a surplus. And if you have a really low price, then you have a lot demanded and you don't have very much supplied. So that's called a shortage. So that's a shortage when you have too low of a price that's small or too low. Now, an increase in demand and supply, right? We can say a supply curve, if it shifts to the right, is an increase, and a shift to the left is a decrease. And then we'd say over here with demand, a shift to the right is an increase, and a shift to the left is a decrease. So that's what we mean when we say there's supply and demand increasing and decreasing with shifters. So hopefully this helps you understand the basics of supply and demand. See you next time.